Hey guys, tonight we begin not with ancient Venice or a medieval stage, but with something far more ruthless and glittering. Wall Street in October 1987. Because believe it or not, Shakespeare's timeless tale of debts, prejudice, and dangerous contracts fits perfectly into an era of power suits, trading floors, and the intoxicating excess of Reagan-era capitalism. From high-stakes loans sealed with handshakes to courtroom battles over corporate empires, this story reminds us that human nature greed, loyalty, revenge, and mercy doesn't change whether you're dealing in ducats or dollars. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The glass towers of Lower Manhattan pierce the autumn sky like crystalline monuments to American ambition. It is October 1987, and the financial district pulses with a fevered energy that feels both invincible and precarious. Yellow cabs stream through narrow canyons of steel and stone, their horns blaring a symphony of metropolitan urgency. Men in tailored suits stride purposefully along sidewalks, still damp from morning rain, their leather briefcases gleaming, their ambitions as sharp as the creases in their trousers. Inside the marble lobby of the prestigious investment firm, Bellario and Associates, Antonio Benedetto stands alone before floor-to-ceiling windows, staring down at the human river flowing along Wall Street. He is 42 years old, impeccably dressed in a charcoal Armani suit with a burgundy silk tie, his dark hair touched with distinguished gray at the temples. Everything about his appearance suggests success, yet his eyes betray a profound melancholy that no amount of wealth can cure. His colleagues have noticed his sadness. In the mahogany-paneled conference rooms and along the bustling trading floor, they whisper about Antonio's unusual demeanor. He is known throughout the financial district as a man of uncommon generosity, an anomaly in an industry built on self-interest. While others hoard their connections and guard their deals with paranoid intensity, Antonio shares his knowledge freely, mentors young traders without expecting favors in return, and has been known to bail out friends facing margin calls without demanding exorbitant interest. This morning, two of his closest associates approach him near the elevator banks. Celerio, a sharp-featured man with slicked-back hair and a Rolex that catches the light with every gesture, places a hand on Antonio's shoulder. Beside him stands Solanio, younger and more athletic, his pinstriped suit custom-made on Savile Row during his last business trip to London. Antonio, you look like you just got the quarterly reports from a company going bankrupt, Celerio says, his voice echoing slightly in the cavernous lobby. What's eating at you? Your shipping ventures are performing spectacularly. The crude oil tanker you financed just completed its route from the Persian Gulf ahead of schedule. The container ships bringing electronics from Japan are due any day now. Your investment in that maritime insurance company has tripled in value. Solanio adjusts his wire-rimmed glasses and adds, seriously, man, if I had your portfolio, I'd be smiling from here to the Hamptons. You've got vessels on every ocean, diversified holdings, and a reputation that opens doors from here to Hong Kong. So what gives? Why do you look like you're attending a funeral? Antonio turns from the window, managing a wan smile. The morning light catches the subtle lines around his eyes, evidence of too many sleepless nights spent reviewing contracts and market reports. Honestly, gentlemen, I don't know why I feel this way. I'm not worried about my ships or my investments. Maybe it's just the weight of this world we've built. Sometimes I wonder if all this, he gestures vaguely at the opulent surroundings, the polished brass fixtures, the abstract art on the walls worth more than most people earn in a lifetime, if all this means anything at all. We trade papers and make fortunes appear on computer screens, but what are we actually creating? Before either can respond, the elevator doors slide open with a soft chime, and Bassanio Graziano bursts into the lobby like a force of nature. He is 35, handsome in a rakish way, with sandy hair slightly too long for Wall Street convention, and a smile that has charmed investment committees and beautiful women in equal measure. His suit is expensive, but not quite as expensive as Antonio's, his tie slightly loosened, his energy infectious and undeniable. Antonio, there you are, you beautiful son of a gun. Bassanio's voice carries across the marble expanse. He strides forward with the confidence of a man who has never met a room he couldn't work. Celerio and Solanio exchange knowing glances and tactfully excuse themselves, heading toward the trading floor where opening bell preparations are creating their usual controlled chaos. Antonio's face brightens genuinely for the first time all morning. Bassanio is more than a colleague or business associate. He is the closest thing Antonio has to family in this city of ambitious strangers. They met 7 years ago when Bassanio was a hungry young analyst with more charisma than capital, and Antonio saw potential where others saw risk. He mentored the younger man, brought him into lucrative deals, and watched him flourish. Bassanio, Antonio greets him warmly, clasping his hand. You're in early. I thought you'd still be recovering from that reception at the plaza last night. Bassanio laughs, running a hand through his hair. That party was incredible, wasn't it? Half the Fortune 500 in one ballroom. But listen, Antonio, I need to talk to you about something important. Can we grab breakfast? There's that diner you like in Tribeca. 20 minutes later, they sit in a red vinyl booth at Mike's Corner Diner, an establishment that seems frozen in 1952, untouched by the yuppie transformation sweeping through downtown Manhattan. The place smells of coffee and bacon grease, and the waitress knows Antonio by name. While Finn and Sears a few blocks away are paying $18 for croissants in pristine cafes, Antonio prefers this authentic slice of old New York. Over eggs and toast, Bassanio leans forward, his expression becoming serious. Antonio, I need to be straight with you, Bassanio begins, his usual bravado stripped away to reveal genuine vulnerability. You know I've been living beyond my means for years now. The co-op in the Upper East Side, the club memberships, the cars, the entertainment expenses, it's all been about maintaining appearances in our world. You can't play in the big leagues if you look like you belong in the minor leagues, right? Antonio sips his coffee, listening without judgment. He has always known about Bassanio's financial recklessness, the way his friend treats money like water flowing through open fingers. Bassanio continues, I owe you already, significantly, the loan you gave me last year for that Miami development deal that went sideways, the bridge loan before that, the money for the trading seat on the exchange. You've never pressed me for repayment, never charged me interest, never made me feel small about it. You're the best friend a man could have, Antonio. But I'm here to ask for more. And I promise you, this time it's different. This time I have a real plan. The waitress refills their coffee cups, and Bassanio waits until she's out of earshot. There's a woman, Portia Belmont. Maybe you've heard of her? Antonio's eyebrows raise slightly. Charles Belmont's daughter? The pharmaceutical magnate who died last spring? That's the one, Bassanio confirms, his eyes lighting up with unmistakable passion. I met her 2 years ago at a charity gala for the Metropolitan Opera. Antonio, she's extraordinary. Beautiful, yes, stunning. Actually, but it's more than that. She's brilliant, educated at Radcliffe, speaks 4 languages, understands economics and law better than most of the partners at Sullivan and Cromwell. And there's this sadness in her eyes, like she's trapped in a golden cage. We talked for 3 hours that night about everything from Mozart to monetary policy. I haven't been able to stop thinking about her since. Antonio watches his friend's face transform as he speaks about this woman. He recognizes the symptoms of genuine love, rare and precious in their cynical world. The problem, Bassanio says, leaning back in the booth, is that she's completely out of my league financially. Her father left her an estate worth somewhere north of $200 million. The Belmont Mansion in Belmont, yes. The town is actually named after her family, is like something out of The Great Gatsby. 20-acre grounds, tennis courts, indoor pool, art collection that would make the Frick Museum jealous. He pauses, choosing his words carefully. But here's the thing. Old Charles Belmont was eccentric, brilliant, and controlling even from beyond the grave. He put a bizarre clause in his will regarding Portia's inheritance and marriage. Any man who wants to marry her must first pass a test of his character and wisdom. There are 3 scenarios presented in sealed envelopes: gold, silver, and lead. Each contains a different challenge or question. The suitor must choose one envelope, and only by choosing correctly and completing whatever task is inside can he win her hand. Antonio leans forward, intrigued despite himself. That's insane. How is that even legal? Her father's lawyers structured it so that Portia's full inheritance is tied to compliance with his wishes. She gets a trust fund that keeps her comfortable, but the bulk of the estate, the companies, the real power that only comes when she marries according to her father's conditions. She's essentially a prisoner of his last will and testament. Bassanio's voice drops lower. The suitors have been arriving from everywhere. There's a Moroccan prince who made billions in oil, a prince from Aragon whose family owns half of Barcelona, tech millionaires from California, European aristocrats, even a Japanese industrialist. They all show up at the Belmont estate, make their choice, and so far every single one has failed. Portia told me we've been talking on the phone, long conversations late at night, when she can't sleep, that she dreads these tests. Most of these men just want her money or the prestige of the Belmont name. But you're different? Antonio asks gently. I'd like to think so, Bassanio replies. I'm not going to pretend I don't need financial stability. You know better than anyone that I do. But Antonio, when I talk to this woman, I forget about balance sheets and portfolios. I feel like I'm becoming a better version of myself. She challenges me intellectually, makes me want to be more than just another Wall Street player chasing the next deal. He takes a breath, steadying himself when they ask, I need capital, Antonio. Enough to present myself as a serious candidate. Not to buy her God knows money is the one thing she doesn't need, but to show her I'm playing at the same level. I need the right clothes for the weekend at her estate. A proper gift that shows taste rather than desperation. Maybe a new car. because my Porsche is leased and behind on payments. I need to look like a man who has his life together, not a charming mess surviving on credit and goodwill. Antonio sets down his coffee cup, his expression thoughtful. How much are we talking about? $50,000. Maybe 75 to do it properly. It is a substantial sum, enough to buy a luxury car or put a down payment on a Manhattan apartment. Antonio mentally reviews his assets. His investments are sound, but they are not liquid. Most of his capital is tied up in the shipping ventures, 3 vessels currently at sea. Their cargo is valuable, but not yet converted to cash. Bassanio, you know I'd give you anything, Antonio says, his voice firm with conviction. The money is yours. Consider it done. The problem is timing. My accountant just called yesterday. The liquidity situation is tight right now. The tanker from the Gulf won't dock for another 2 weeks. The container ships from Yokohama are due in 3 weeks, weather permitting. I've got $600,000 in commercial paper that matures next month, but ready cash that I can hand you today? I'm stretched thin. Bassanio's face falls slightly, but Antonio quickly raises a hand. Wait, let me finish. I don't have the cash on hand, but I have something more valuable in this city, my reputation. My credit is impeccable. We'll go to the market and borrow against my expected returns. With my signature, we can get you $75,000 by tomorrow afternoon. Antonio, I can't ask you to put your credit on the line for my love life, Bassanio protests, though hope flickers in his eyes. You're not asking, I'm offering. What good is having a sterling reputation if I can't use it to help the people I care about? Antonio signals for the check, his decision made. I know someone who might be able to arrange this quickly. Shylock Levin. The name hangs in the air between them like a challenge. Bassanio's expression shifts to uncertainty. Shylock? Antonio, everyone knows there's bad blood between you two. Are you sure that's wise? Antonio's jaw tightens slightly. Shylock and I have our differences, yes, professional and personal, but he's the most efficient private lender in the city, and he has capital to deploy immediately. The banks will take weeks with their paperwork and committees. Shylock can move fast. They leave the diner and walk through streets, now fully alive with morning rush hour. Delivery trucks double park while drivers shout in multiple languages. Hot dog vendors set up their carts on corners. A homeless man in a tattered army jacket holds a cardboard sign asking for help. The contrast between wealth and poverty in this city exists on every block, a constant reminder of capitalism's winners and losers. Shylock Levin's office occupies the 10th floor of an older building on Broad Street, away from the gleaming new towers where the establishment firms reside. The lobby is functional rather than impressive, the elevator slow and creaky. When they enter Shylock's domain, they find a space that reflects its owner efficient, unadorned, focused entirely on business rather than image. Shylock himself sits behind a large desk covered with financial newspapers, computer printouts, and legal documents. He is 58 years old, with silver hair, sharp features, and eyes that miss nothing. His suit is well made, but conservative. His office lacks the expensive art and status symbols that decorate the spaces of his more socially accepted competitors. On the wall behind him hangs a single photograph, his late wife Rebecca, taken 20 years ago, her smile radiant and eternally young. He looks up as Antonio and Bassanio enter, and something complicated flashes across his face. Respect, resentment, old wounds, and current calculations all compete for dominance in his expression. Antonio Benedetto, Shylock says, his voice carrying a slight New York accent that he has never tried to polish away. This is unexpected. You usually go out of your way to avoid doing business with me. What brings you to my humble establishment? Need something the gentleman at Morgan Stanley won't provide? Antonio meets his gaze steadily. Shylock, I need to borrow $75,000 for 3 months. My ships are due in by then, at which point I'll repay you with whatever interest rate you deem fair. Shylock leans back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. 75,000, 3 months. And what collateral do you offer besides your famous good name? My word should be sufficient, Antonio replies. You know my track record. I've never defaulted on an obligation in my life. A bitter smile plays at the corners of Shylock's mouth. Your word. Yes, I know your word, Antonio. I've heard it used against me many times. You speak eloquently at the Downtown Association about fair lending practices while making sure I'm never invited to join. You tell your friends that my interest rates are usurious, even though I charge less than the credit card companies. You've called me, what was it? A vulture who profits from others' desperation. Antonio's face flushes slightly. I've criticized your business practices, yes. I don't believe in profiting excessively from lending money, but I've never questioned your competence or your reliability. How magnanimous, Shylock responds, his tone sharp. You and your establishment friends with your inherited wealth and your country club memberships look down on those of us who had to claw our way up from nothing. My father survived Auschwitz, came to this country with nothing, and built a small lending business in the Bronx. I took that business and grew it into something substantial. But because I charge interest for taking risks, because I expect to be paid back with profit, I'm treated like I'm doing something shameful. He stands and walks to the window, looking out at the financial district that has never fully accepted him. Do you know how many deals I've been shut out of because the right people don't want Shylock Levin at the table? How many times I've had the capital and the expertise but been passed over for someone with the right last name and the right club ties? Bassanio shifts uncomfortably, but Antonio remains still, letting Shylock speak. But fine, Shylock turns back to them. Let's talk business. 75,000 for 3 months. Normally I'd charge 8% interest. Errant. Something that might amuse us both. But for you, Antonio, let me propose something diff. Shylock's eyes glitter with something between mischief and malice. I propose we make this loan interest-free. No percentage, no profit for me. Pure generosity, Antonio, the kind you're so famous for showing to everyone except me. Antonio narrows his eyes, suspicious. What's the catch? A gentleman's wager, nothing more, Shylock says, moving back to his desk and pulling out a legal pad. If you repay me this 75,000 within 3 months, we're square. You walk away having borrowed money without cost, and I get the satisfaction of having helped the great Antonio Benedetto. But if you default, if your ships don't come in, if your investments fail, if for any reason you cannot repay me, then you forfeit something more valuable than money. He begins writing, his pen scratching across the paper with deliberate precision. If you default, you will sign over to me, controlling interest in Benedetto Maritime Holdings, your shipping company, Antonio. The business you built over 15 years. I get 51%, enough to control every decision, every route, every vessel. You'll watch me run your company while you become a minority shareholder in your own empire. The office falls silent, except for the distant sound of traffic from the street below. Bassanio steps forward, alarm clear on his face. That's insane. Antonio, don't agree to this. The risk is too high. But Shylock continues, his voice taking on a lecturing tone. You see, Antonio, this is about more than money. This is about respect. For years, you and your kind have treated me like I'm beneath you. You've blocked me from the deals that matter, whispered about me at your fancy dinners, made sure I remain an outsider no matter how successful I become. If I simply lend you money at interest, you'll take it, resent me for it, and continue looking down on me. But this way we're equals in the gamble. You're risking something you truly value, just as I risk my capital. Antonio considers the proposal, his mind working through the mathematics. 3 ships at sea, all fully insured, all carrying valuable cargo. The container ships from Japan alone will generate $200,000 in profit. The oil tanker is contracted to deliver to refineries in New Jersey, with payment due immediately upon arrival. His other investments are solid. The risk of all 3 vessels failing to arrive is astronomically small. And if I agree to these terms, Antonio says slowly, you'll have the money ready tomorrow? By noon tomorrow, Shylock confirms. Cashier's check, ready to deposit. My lawyer will draw up the paperwork today. We'll keep it simple, a private agreement between us, no need to involve the banks or the regulatory authorities. Just 2 businessmen and a handshake, backed by a contract. Bassanio grabs Antonio's arm. This is crazy. Your company for $75,000? The disproportion is grotesque. Please, Antonio, we'll find another way. I can wait. I can approach Portia without the money. Antonio gently removes Bassanio's hand from his arm, his decision crystallizing. No, my friend. This is the opportunity you need, and I won't let it slip away because of excessive caution. Shylock is right. The odds of default are virtually 0. My ships will arrive. They always do. I've been in this business long enough to know how to manage risk. He turns to Shylock, extending his hand. You have yourself a deal. Draw up the contract. Make it legal and binding. If I default, you get controlling interest in my company. But I won't default, Shylock. In 3 months, I'll repay you every dollar, and perhaps then you'll understand that my success isn't about looking down on others. It's about calculated risks and reliable execution. Shylock takes Antonio's hand, his grip firm. Then we have an accord. My lawyer will messenger the documents to your office by 6 o'clock this evening. Review them, sign them, return them by morning, and you'll have your money by noon. May your ships sail true, Antonio. For both our sakes, as Antonio and Bassanio leave the building and emerge back into the bright October sunlight, Bassanio remains troubled. I don't like this, Antonio. There's something in his eyes. He wants more than just the money back. He wants to see you fail. Then he'll be disappointed, Antonio replies with a confidence he genuinely feels. My ships are sound, my captain's experienced, my insurance comprehensive. Nothing will go wrong. They part ways at the corner, Bassanio heading uptown to begin preparations for his journey to Belmont, Antonio returning to his office to await Shylock's contract. Neither man notices the dark clouds gathering on the western horizon, rolling in from the Atlantic like a prophecy written in water vapor and electricity. Meanwhile, 30 miles north in the exclusive enclave of Belmont, New York, A very different drama unfolds behind the iron gates and manicured hedges of the Belmont estate. The mansion rises like a palace from the landscaped grounds, its limestone facade glowing golden in the afternoon light. Inside, in a sitting room decorated with French antiques and paintings by Monet and Renoir, Portia Belmont sits with her assistant and confidante, Nerissa Chun. Portia is 29 years old, with dark hair swept back in an elegant chignon, intelligent brown eyes, and a classical beauty that photographers constantly beg to capture for magazine covers. She wears a simple but expensive cashmere sweater and tailored slacks, her only jewelry a strand of pearls that belonged to her mother. Despite her surroundings and her wealth, there is something melancholy about her posture as she stares out the window at the autumn leaves falling from ancient oak trees. Nerissa, a sharp-witted woman in her early 30s with short black hair and wire-rimmed glasses, sits across from Portia with a leather-bound planner open on her lap. She has been with the Belmont family for 8 years, starting as Portia's personal assistant and becoming her closest friend and trusted advisor. Where Portia is elegant and refined, Nerissa is practical and direct, a perfect counterbalance. "You have another one arriving this weekend," Nerissa says, consulting her notes. "Prince Hassan from Morocco. He made his fortune in oil and diamond mining. His people called yesterday to confirm that he'll be bringing a security detail of 6 men and his personal photographer to document the occasion." Portia closes her eyes and sighs deeply. A photographer, of course, because this circus isn't humiliating enough without having it immortalized on film. "What number suitor is this, Nerissa?" "I've lost count." "Prince Hassan makes 7, Nerissa replies, though technically the Count from Florence withdrew before making his choice, so he doesn't really count. The others actually went through with it and failed. Portia stands and begins pacing the oriental rug, her frustration evident in every movement. My father must have been losing his mind in those final months. What rational person designed such a bizarre test for their daughter's future? Gold, silver, and lead envelopes. 3 challenges. Choose wisely or remain trapped. It's like something from a twisted fairy tale. Your father wanted to protect you, Nerissa offers gently. He knew that with your beauty and your fortune, you'd attract every fortune hunter and social climber on the eastern seaboard. This test is supposed to reveal a man's true character. It reveals nothing except that. Wealthy men have enormous egos and terrible judgment, Portia counters, her voice sharp with bitterness. Do you remember the German banker Klaus von Richter? He chose the gold envelope because, and I quote, "Only gold is worthy of golden Portia." Inside was a challenge requiring him to donate his entire net worth to charity and start over with nothing. He declined naturally and left in his Mercedes within the hour. Nerissa suppresses a smile. To be fair, that was rather extreme. And the Texas oil man, Chip Thornton? He chose the silver envelope, thinking it showed humility. The challenge required him to work for minimum wage at a homeless shelter for 1 year. He actually laughed, thinking it was a joke. When he realized I was serious, he called my father my dead father, some choice words I won't repeat, and threatened to sue for emotional distress. She moves to the window, looking out at the grounds where gardeners are raking leaves into neat piles. The lead envelope has never been chosen. Everyone assumes it's the worst option, the trick choice. They all reach for gold or silver, thinking themselves too clever to fall for the obvious trap. But none of them understand what my father was actually testing, which is, Nerissa prompts, character over appearance, substance over style. The willingness to choose what seems worthless because you understand that true value isn't always shiny and obvious. Portia's voice softens. My father built a pharmaceutical empire by investing in research that other companies dismissed. He saw potential where others saw risk. He believed in looking beneath the surface. Nerissa closes her planner and sets it aside. You've been talking a lot lately with that Bassanio fellow from New York. Late-night phone calls that stretch past midnight. Should I be adding him to the calendar? A genuine smile crosses Portia's face for the first time in the conversation. Bassanio is different. We met 2 years ago, and he didn't know who I was at first. We just talked about music and books and ideas. He made me laugh, Nerissa. When was the last time anyone made me laugh? He didn't treat me like a prize to be won or a bank account to be accessed. But he's also broke, Nerissa points out pragmatically. I did some research after you mentioned him. He's charming and well-connected, but he's deeply in debt. His lifestyle exceeds his income by a substantial margin. Some might call him exactly the kind of fortune hunter your father wanted to protect you from. Portia turns from the window, her expression thoughtful. Maybe. Or maybe he's someone who's been trying to survive in a world that judges everything by appearances and price tags. I don't know, Nerissa. I just know that when I talk to him, I feel like a person instead of a portfolio. He asks about my opinions, my thoughts, my dreams. Not my stock holdings or my real estate investments. He called yesterday, Nerissa admits, while you were at your lawyer's office. He said he's coming to try the test this weekend. He wanted to know if Saturday would be convenient. Portia's breath catches. He's coming this weekend? But I thought he said he needed time to prepare, to get his affairs in order. Apparently his affairs are now in order, Nerissa says. Should I tell him Saturday works? Portia nods slowly, a mixture of hope and fear playing across her features. Yes, tell him Saturday. And, Nerissa, don't do any more research on his finances. I don't want to know. I want to see what choice he makes, what his decision reveals about who he really is. And if he chooses wrong, Nerissa asks softly. Then I'll know, Portia replies, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll know he was just like all the others, and I can stop hoping for something different. That evening, as the sun sets over Manhattan, painting the glass towers in shades of copper and gold, Antonio sits in his corner office reviewing the contract that Shylock's messenger delivered an hour ago. The document is surprisingly straightforward, stripped of the usual legal obfuscation. The terms are exactly as discussed, $75,000 due in 3 months, with controlling interest in Benedetto Maritime Holdings as the penalty for default. His secretary, a efficient woman named Margaret, who has worked for him for 12 years, brings in a cup of coffee and sets it on his desk. Mr. Benedetto, you have a call on line 2. It's your shipping agent in Tokyo. He says it's urgent. Antonio picks up the phone, his heart rate increasing slightly. Nakamura-san, what's the situation? The voice on the other end crackles across the Pacific connection. Mr. Benedetto, I wanted to give you advance notice. There's a typhoon developing in the western Pacific. Typhoon Ruth. It's tracking northeast, and the meteorologists are saying it could be one of the strongest storms of the season. Your container ships are currently in the projected path. Antonio grips the phone tighter. What's the captain's plan? Captain Morrison is an experienced seaman, as you know. He's already altering course to avoid the worst of the system. They're adding 2 days to the journey. but they should be able to skirt around the storm. The vessels are sound, the cargo is properly secured. I wouldn't worry excessively, but I thought you should know. After hanging up, Antonio stares at the contract on his desk. 2 days delay. That still leaves plenty of margin within the 3-month window. He signs his name with a bold flourish and places the document in an envelope for return to Shylock's office. Across town, in a modest apartment in the West Village, another drama is unfolding that will intersect with Antonio's fate in unexpected ways. Jessica Levin, Shylock's 23-year-old daughter, stands before her bedroom mirror, applying makeup with hands that tremble slightly with anticipation and guilt. She is delicate and dark-haired, with her late mother's kind eyes and her father's sharp intelligence. But where Shylock has grown bitter and hardened by years of exclusion and prejudice, Jessica has retained an openness to the world that frightens her father. She attends NYU studying comparative literature, surrounds herself with artists and musicians, and has fallen in love with Lorenzo Graziano, a junior trader at Merrill Lynch, who represents everything her father distrusts about the Gentile establishment. Tonight she is planning to escape. Not forever, she tells herself. It's not forever, but for a weekend in the Hamptons with Lorenzo and his friends. She has packed a small bag hidden under her bed, has written a note that she keeps revising and discarding, and has been waiting for her father to leave for his weekly chess game at the community center. The apartment they share is comfortable, but not lavish, filled with books and her mother's photographs. Shylock could afford a penthouse, could live in the same buildings as the men who exclude him from their clubs, but he chooses to stay here in the neighborhood where he and Rebecca started their life together. Every object in the apartment carries a memory, and Jessica feels the weight of those memories as she contemplates her departure. She hears her father moving in the living room, gathering his coat and chess set. She holds her breath, waiting for the sound of the door closing. When it finally comes, she waits another 5 minutes before emerging from her room. In the entryway, she finds an envelope addressed to her on the hall table. Inside is a check for $5,000 and a note in her father's precise handwriting. For your tuition and books next semester. Your mother would be proud of the woman you're becoming. I love you more than my own life. Father, Jessica's eyes fill with tears as she holds the note and the check. The money represents hours of work, deals negotiated, risks taken. Her father, for all his rough edges and bitterness toward the world, has never been anything but generous and loving to her. She is his entire universe since Rebecca died, and she is about to betray that trust by running off with a man he has forbidden her to see. She stands paralyzed in the hallway, torn between 2 worlds. Lorenzo is waiting for her 3 blocks away in his BMW, the engine running, ready to whisk her away to a weekend of parties and beaches and freedom. But her father will return home in 3 hours, expecting to find her studying at the kitchen table, as she does every Thursday evening. With shaking hands, she pulls out her pre-written note from her purse and places it on the table where her father will see it. The note reads, "Father, I know you won't understand this, but I need to live my own life. I need to make my own choices, even if they're mistakes. I love you, but I can't be your princess locked in a tower anymore. I'll call you soon. Jessica." She picks up her bag, takes one last look around the apartment that has been her home for 23 years, and walks out the door before she can change her mind. Minutes later, she slides into Lorenzo's car, and he greets her with a kiss that tastes like champagne and promises. Saturday morning arrives with crystalline autumn clarity, the kind of October day when the air feels sharp enough to cut and the sky stretches endlessly blue. Bassanio's rented Mercedes glides through the gates of the Belmont estate at precisely 10 o'clock, his timing impeccable as always. He has spent the past 3 days transforming himself into the image of success new Armani suits from Barney's, Italian leather shoes, a Cartier watch that he purchased rather than leased, and a first edition of Elizabeth Barrett Browning's Sonnets from the Portuguese as a gift for Portia, carefully selected from a rare book dealer on Madison Avenue. The $75,000 from Antonio has been deployed with strategic precision. Every detail of his appearance speaks of a man who has arrived, who belongs in this rarefied world of old money and older traditions. As he steps out of the car, his confidence is genuine rather than performed. He is here not as a supplicant begging for wealth, but as a man pursuing the woman who has captured his imagination and, he believes, his heart. Portia herself answers the door, having dismissed the household staff for this moment. She wears a simple navy dress that somehow makes her look both elegant and approachable, her hair loose around her shoulders in a way Bassanio has never seen before. The formality of their previous encounters dissolves in an instant. "Bassanio," she says, and her voice carries relief and anxiety in equal measure. "You came. I told you I would," he replies, offering her the book. "I saw this and thought of you." The inscription inside Browning wrote it to her husband. "I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach." It seemed appropriate. Portia takes the book with hands that tremble almost imperceptibly. "You remembered that Elizabeth Barrett Browning is my favorite poet. From a conversation we had 18 months ago. I remember everything you've told me," Bassanio says simply. Nerissa appears in the doorway, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes assessing Bassanio with the thoroughness of a detective. "Mr. Graziano, welcome to Belmont. Shall we proceed to the library where the test has been prepared?" The library is a 2-story room lined with leather-bound volumes, dominated by a massive oak desk that belonged to Portia's grandfather. On the desk sit 3 envelopes, 1 gold, 1 silver, 1 lead each sealed, with red wax bearing the Belmont family crest. The room smells of old paper and lemon oil, of generations of accumulated knowledge and wealth. Portia positions herself near the window, deliberately creating physical distance. "Bassanio, you understand the terms. You must choose 1 envelope. Inside is a challenge or question that will test your character and wisdom. Choose correctly, and we can pursue a future together. Choose incorrectly, and you must leave immediately and never speak of marriage to me again. These were my father's wishes, and I am bound by them." Bassanio approaches the desk, studying the 3 envelopes. The gold gleams in the morning light streaming through the windows, prestigious and valuable. The silver catches the light more subtly, elegant and refined. The lead is dull and common, the least attractive of the 3 options by far. "May I think aloud?" he asks, and Portia nods. Bassanio begins to pace, his analytical mind engaging with the problem. Gold represents the obvious choice. It's what men reach for first, the most valuable metal, the symbol of wealth and success. But obvious choices are often traps. In my business, the deals that look too good to be true usually are. Gold draws the eye, because we're conditioned to see it as the ultimate prize, but that conditioning makes us vulnerable to deception. He moves to examine the silver envelope. Silver is the middle path. Not as flashy as gold, but still precious, still valuable. It appeals to those who want to appear wise by avoiding the obvious trap, but who still can't quite commit to humility. It's the choice of compromise, of hedging your bets. A safe choice, perhaps, but safety can be its own kind of cowardice. Finally, he stands before the lead envelope, and something shifts in his expression. Lead is worthless by comparison. Heavy, dull, common. It's what bullets are made from, what pipes are constructed with before we knew better. No one wants lead when gold and silver are available. But that's exactly the point, isn't it? He picks up the lead envelope, feeling its weight in his hand. Your father wasn't testing for greed or caution. He was testing for the ability to see value where others see worthlessness, to choose substance over appearance, to understand that the most important things in life, love, integrity, character, they don't glitter like gold or shine like silver. They're as plain and necessary as lead, and just as easily overlooked. Portia's eyes have filled with tears, but she blinks them back, maintaining her composure. Bassanio breaks the seal on the lead envelope and withdraws a single card. He reads aloud, "You have chosen wisely, for you have chosen with your heart rather than your eyes." The challenge is this: tell the woman before you one true thing about yourself that you have never told anyone else. Reveal your authentic self, stripped of pretense. The silence in the library stretches for what feels like an eternity. Bassanio sets down the card, and when he speaks again, his voice has lost all trace of the smooth confidence that usually characterizes him. He sounds young and uncertain, stripped of his Wall Street armor. "The true thing," he begins, looking directly at Portia, "is that I'm terrified of being ordinary. My whole life, the expensive clothes, the right restaurants, the club memberships I can't afford, it's all been a costume to hide the fact that I grew up in a 2-bedroom house in Queens. My father was a bus driver. My mother cleaned houses for families like yours. They sacrificed everything to send me to Columbia, and when I graduated, I was so desperate to never go back to that life that I became someone else entirely." He runs his hand through his hair, a gesture of vulnerability. "I borrowed money from Antonio, a man who has shown me nothing but kindness, and I've never paid him back. Not because I'm malicious, but because I keep spending money I don't have trying to maintain an image that's exhausting me. I came here today with $75,000 that isn't mine, wearing a watch I bought to impress you, driving a car I rented to look successful." Portia doesn't move, but her eyes never leave his face. "And the most terrifying part," Bassanio continues, "is that I don't know if I fell in love with you or with the idea of you. When we talked at that gala, you were so brilliant and beautiful, and yes, I knew who you were, knew about your fortune. I can't separate what I feel from what I need, and that makes me feel like the worst kind of fraud. But I'm here because somewhere in all of that confusion, there's something real. When we talk on the phone late at night about poetry and philosophy, I forget about money entirely. You make me want to be the person I've been pretending to be, someone worthy of success rather than someone just wearing its costume." The confession hangs in the air between them like a living thing. Nerissa, standing near the door, looks as though she wants to interrupt but restrains herself. Portia walks slowly toward Bassanio, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. When she reaches him, she takes both of his hands in hers. "Do you know what every other suitor has done when they opened their envelope? They read their challenge and immediately started calculating whether it was worth it, whether I was worth the cost. They treated it like a business transaction. Tears now flow freely down her face. You just told me the truth. You revealed yourself at the risk of losing everything. That's what my father was looking for, someone brave enough to be vulnerable, honest enough to admit his flaws, real enough to be human rather than perfect. She reaches up and touches his face gently. I don't need you to be extraordinary, Bassanio. I've been surrounded by extraordinary wealth and extraordinary people my entire life, and most of them are extraordinarily empty. I need you to be real. Can you do that? I can try, he says, and then they're kissing, the test forgotten. The library transformed from a chamber of judgment into a space of genuine connection. Nerissa clears her throat diplomatically. I'll arrange for lunch to be served on the terrace. Take your time. As she leaves, Portia and Bassanio stand together in the sunlight streaming through the tall windows. Two people who have found in each other permission to stop performing and start living. But while love blooms in Belmont, tragedy germinates in Manhattan. Shylock returns to his West Village apartment Thursday evening after his chess game, calling out his usual greeting. Jessica, I'm home. Did you eat dinner already? Silence answers him, the kind of silence that feels wrong immediately. He moves through the apartment, noting the absence of her textbooks on the kitchen table, her jacket missing from the hook by the door. In her bedroom, drawers stand slightly open, hangers empty of her favorite clothes. On the hall table, he finds the note. He reads it once, twice, 3 times, each reading making the words cut deeper. His daughter, his Rebecca's daughter, his reason for continuing after his wife's death has left him. For what? For some boy, undoubtedly. For the promise of a world that will never truly accept her because of who her father is. He sinks into his armchair, still wearing his coat, the note crumpled in his fist. Around him, the photographs of Rebecca seem to watch with sad, knowing eyes. He has lost both the women he loved, one to cancer and one to his own inability to let go. The phone rings, shattering the silence. It's his associate, Marcus, calling with news about Antonio's shipping ventures. Shylock, I thought you'd want to know. That typhoon in the Pacific? Typhoon Ruth? It changed course unexpectedly. The meteorologists got it wrong. It tracked directly through the shipping lanes where Antonio's container vessels were rerouting. The Coast Guard has lost radio contact with both ships. Shylock closes his eyes, but whether he feels satisfaction or sorrow, even he cannot say. Lost contact? Shylock's voice is hollow. What does that mean exactly? It means they're not responding to radio calls, Marcus explains. Could be equipment failure, could be storm damage. The typhoon hit with winds exceeding 150 miles per hour. The Japanese Coast Guard has deployed search aircraft, but visibility is terrible. We won't know anything definitive for at least 24 hours. After hanging up, Shylock sits in the gathering darkness of his apartment, not bothering to turn on lights. His daughter is gone. Antonio's ships may be destroyed. The contract he signed as much out of spite as business sense now transforms from abstract revenge into concrete possibility. He could actually end up owning Antonio's company, taking control of the enterprise that represents everything he has been excluded from legitimate maritime trade. Respect in the shipping industry, acceptance by the establishment. But the victory, if it comes, tastes like ashes before he has even achieved it. What good is crushing Antonio when his own daughter has fled from him? What profit is there in proving a point when the apartment echoes with unbearable emptiness? He pulls out his wallet and removes a photograph he keeps behind his credit cards. Jessica, at her high school graduation. Rebecca standing beside her with terminal illness already visible in her gauntness, but her smile radiating pride. Two women who represented everything good in his life. One dead, one disappeared into a world that sees him as nothing more than a stereotype, the grasping Jewish moneylender from a Dickens novel. The following weeks pass in a mounting cascade of bad news. Antonio's container ships are confirmed destroyed in Typhoon Ruth, broken apart by waves 3 stories high. 17 crew members are rescued by a Japanese fishing vessel, but the cargo electronics, textiles, machinery worth over $400,000 rests at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. The insurance company launches an investigation, questioning whether proper storm protocols were followed, delaying any payout indefinitely. The oil tanker from the Persian Gulf encounters different problems. Political tensions in the region explode into violence when the USS Stark is attacked by Iraqi forces in the Persian Gulf. The waterways become war zones, and Antonio's tanker is detained by Iranian patrol boats, impounded pending an investigation into its cargo and origins. The crude oil sits inaccessible in international legal limbo. Antonio's commercial paper, due to mature and provide liquidity, is tied to a real estate development in Houston that collapses when oil prices plummet. The developer files for bankruptcy protection, and Antonio's investment evaporates overnight. By early December, as Christmas decorations begin appearing in Manhattan store windows and the first snow dusts the streets, Antonio sits in his office calculating and recalculating figures that refuse to improve no matter how many times he reviews them. His secretary Margaret brings in yet another letter from an attorney, this one representing the insurance consortium. "Mr. Benedetto, you have a visitor," she says quietly. "Mr. Levin is here." Shylock enters wearing the same conservative suit he wore months ago, but he looks older now, diminished somehow. His eyes carry the weight of sleepless nights and personal grief. The two men regard each other across the desk, former adversaries now bound together by a contract that neither truly wanted to enforce. "Antonio," Shylock says, "I've come to discuss our agreement. The 3 months are nearly up." "I'm aware," Antonio replies, his voice steady despite everything. "I cannot pay. My assets are frozen, my ships destroyed or impounded, my liquid capital gone. If you demand fulfillment of the contract, I have no choice but to surrender controlling interest in my company." Shylock sits down heavily in the chair across from him. For a long moment, neither speaks. Finally, Shylock says, "My daughter left me. Did you know that? She ran off with Lorenzo Graziano. I believe he works in your building. They're living together somewhere in Soho, and she won't return my calls." Antonio nods slowly. "I heard rumors." "I'm sorry. Are you?" Shylock's voice carries no accusation, only exhaustion. "I've spent weeks thinking about that contract, about taking your company from you. I imagined the satisfaction I would feel, finally having power over one of the establishment elite. But you know what I realized, Antonio? Revenge is the coldest currency. It can't buy back what I've lost." He stands and walks to the window, overlooking Wall Street, where traders and bankers hurry through the December cold toward their next deals, their next conquests. "But I signed a contract, and unlike my daughter, unlike your ships, unlike every promise this city makes and breaks, a contract is binding. I will require what is owed to me. Not because I want to hurt you, but because it's the only thing I have left that means anything my word, formalized in legal language. The arbitration hearing is scheduled for December 15th at the offices of Whitman and Cross, a prestigious law firm that specializes in complex commercial disputes. Both parties agreed to private arbitration rather than public court proceedings. Antonio, to avoid the humiliation of his financial collapse becoming tabloid fodder; Shylock, to prevent the anti-Semitic scrutiny that a public trial would inevitably attract. The conference room on the 42nd floor is all polished mahogany and leather chairs, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the Brooklyn Bridge stretching across the East River. Snow falls steadily outside, muffling the city sounds and creating an atmosphere of isolated judgment. Antonio arrives with Bassanio at his side. His friend has been back from Belmont for 2 weeks, having cut short his courtship when news of Antonio's disaster reached him. Bassanio looks haunted by guilt. The money he spent on winning Portia was borrowed against Antonio's ruin. His new suits and his successful test at the Belmont estate were purchased with currency that Antonio now cannot repay. "You should have let me sell everything," Bassanio says for the 100th time. "The watch, the car, everything I bought. It wouldn't have been enough, but it would have been something, and it would have changed nothing," Antonio replies wearily. $75,000 wouldn't have prevented the typhoon, or the political situation in the Persian Gulf. "This was always a risk, Bassanio. I took the gamble willingly." Shylock arrives alone, carrying a leather briefcase and looking like a man attending a funeral. His attorney, Harold Steinberg, is a sharp young partner at a midtown firm who has reviewed the contract and confirmed its validity. The document is airtight, no loopholes, no escape clauses, no ambiguity. The arbitrator is retired Judge Malcolm Hendricks, a distinguished African-American jurist known for his fairness and his intolerance for legal theatrics. He is 70 years old, with silver hair and reading glasses that hang on a chain around his neck. He reviews the contract documents with meticulous care while the parties wait in tense silence. "Gentlemen," Judge Hendricks finally says, "I've reviewed the agreement signed by both parties on October 8, 1987. The terms are clear. Mr. Benedetto borrowed $75,000 from Mr. Levin with a repayment deadline of January 8, 1988. In lieu of monetary interest, the parties agreed that failure to repay would result in Mr. Levin receiving controlling interest, specifically 51% ownership of Benedetto Maritime Holdings." He looks up over his glasses. "Mr. Benedetto, do you contest the validity of this contract?" Antonio shakes his head. "No, Your Honor. I signed it freely and with full understanding of the terms. You acknowledge that you cannot repay the $75,000 by the deadline?" "I acknowledge that, yes." Judge Hendricks turns to Shylock. "Mr. Levin, you are here to enforce this contract and claim the agreed-upon penalty?" Shylock stands, his hands gripping the back of his chair. "I am, Your Honor. But I want to say something first, if I may." "Proceed." "People in this city see me a certain way," Shylock begins, his voice controlled but emotional. "They see a man who charges interest on loans, and they call him a bloodsucker. They see a Jew who won't join their country clubs, and they call him clannish. They see someone who remembers slights and insults, and they call him vindictive. But what they don't see is decades of being treated as less than human." He turns to face Antonio directly. "You, Antonio Benedetto, you represent everything this establishment values. Old world charm, generous lending without interest, the appearance of nobility in business dealings. But your generosity is only possible because you were born into privilege. You can afford to lend without interest because you have resources from shipping, from investments, from opportunities that were never available to someone like me. Antonio listens without defending himself, accepting the accusations as truths he has never fully acknowledged. My father survived the camps, Shylock continues, his voice breaking slightly. He came to this country with nothing and built a lending business because no bank would hire him. No firm would make him a partner. I expanded that business, made it legitimate and profitable, and still I'm treated like something dirty that needs to be washed off the hands of respectable men. Judge Hendricks allows him to speak, recognizing that this hearing is about more than just a contract. So yes, Shylock says, I want what the contract promises me. Not because I need Antonio's company, not because I'm cruel, but because a contract is the only thing that makes us equal under law. In this room, with this document, I am not a Jewish moneylender, and he is not an establishment gentleman. We are two businessmen who made an agreement. If that agreement means nothing, then I truly am worthless in this society. The room falls silent after Shylock's speech. Even his attorney looks moved by the raw emotion in his client's words. Judge Hendricks removes his glasses and cleans them slowly, a gesture that suggests he is carefully considering everything he has heard. Mr. Levin, the judge says finally, your points are noted. The law does not discriminate based on religion or background, and a contract freely entered into by competent parties must be honored. Unless Mr. Benedetto's counsel has legal grounds to contest this agreement, I am prepared to rule in your favor. Antonio's attorney, a corporate specialist named Robert Shun, stands and spreads his hands helplessly. Your Honor, we have no legal basis to contest. The contract is valid. We can only appeal to Mr. Levin's mercy and ask him to consider accepting delayed payment or alternative compensation. Mr. Levin, Judge Hendricks asks, are you willing to negotiate modified terms? Before Shylock can answer, the conference room door opens, and the firm's senior receptionist enters looking flustered. I apologize for the interruption, Judge Hendricks, but there's a Ms. Portia Belmont here with her attorney. She claims to have standing in this matter and requests permission to address the arbitration. Every head in the room turns toward the door as Portia enters, followed by Nerissa, who carries a briefcase. Portia is dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit with a white silk blouse, her hair pulled back severely, radiating authority and intelligence. She looks like she belongs in this room, in this world of high-stakes legal negotiations. Basnio half rises from his chair, shock and confusion evident on his face. Portia, what are you doing here? She gives him a brief, reassuring glance before addressing the judge. Your Honor, my name is Portia Belmont. I have a substantial financial interest in the outcome of this proceeding because I am engaged to marry Bassanio Graziano, whose closest friend and benefactor is facing ruin. Additionally, I hold a law degree from Harvard, though I have not practiced due to family obligations. I've reviewed the contract in question, and I believe there are legal considerations that have not yet been addressed. Judge Hendricks studies her with interest. Ms. Belmont, this is highly irregular. You're not listed as a party to this arbitration. I understand, Your Honor, but both parties want justice, do they not? And justice requires that all aspects of a contract be examined thoroughly. I'm not asking to represent either party. I'm simply requesting the opportunity to offer legal analysis that may illuminate issues the court should consider. Shylock's attorney objects immediately. Your Honor, this is absurd. She has no standing here. This appears to be an attempt to delay or obstruct the proceedings. But Judge Hendricks holds up his hand. Mr. Steinberg, I'm interested in hearing what Ms. Belmont has to say. If she wastes the court's time, I'll dismiss her comments and proceed with my ruling. But I've presided over enough hearings to know that sometimes insight comes from unexpected sources. Miss Belmont, you have 10 minutes. Use them wisely. Portia nods graciously and approaches the table where the contract documents are spread. Nerissa hands her a legal pad filled with notes. Thank you, Your Honor. Let me begin by stating that I have great respect for Mr. Levin's position. He is correct that a contract must be honored, that the law provides equal protection regardless of background or religion. These principles are foundational to our legal system. She picks up the contract and reads from it. The agreement states clearly, in the event of default on repayment, the borrower shall forfeit controlling interest, defined as 51% ownership of Benedetto Maritime Holdings. The language is precise and unambiguous. Shylock leans forward, unsure where she is going with this. However, Portia continues, her voice taking on a sharper edge. Contracts must be executed exactly as written, not approximately, not in spirit. Exactly. The law demands precision in both the formation and the enforcement of agreements. She turns to face Shylock directly. Mr. Levin, you are entitled to exactly what this contract promises you: 51% ownership of Benedetto Maritime Holdings. Not 49%, not 53%. Exactly 51%. Do you agree? Of course, Shylock says, confused by the apparent obviousness of her statement. And this transfer of ownership must occur according to legal standards for corporate stock transfers. There will be paperwork, valuations, regulatory filings with the EC, approval by the company's board of directors. This isn't simply taking possession of a car or a piece of furniture. This is a complex corporate transaction governed by securities law, tax law, and corporate governance statutes. Correct? Shylock's attorney nods. Yes, but we're prepared to handle all necessary. And here, Portia interrupts, her voice rising slightly, is where the contract becomes problematic. Because in order to transfer exactly 51% of Benedetto Maritime Holdings, you need to establish the precise value of that company. The company's value is easily established, Shylock's attorney argues. We'll hire independent valuators, use standard methodologies. But that's the problem, Portia cuts in, her tone sharp and precise. Benedetto Maritime Holdings currently has no ships. They were destroyed or impounded. The company's primary assets no longer exist. Its ongoing contracts are in breach due to inability to perform. Its insurance claims are contested and may take years to resolve. What exactly are you valuing? A corporate shell with massive liabilities and virtually no assets? She begins pacing, her legal mind now fully engaged. Let's be even more specific. The contract says you get 51% ownership. But ownership of what, precisely? If Mr. Benedetto declares bankruptcy, which he may be forced to do, the company enters receivership. Creditors line up to claim whatever fragments remain. Your 51% ownership might entitle you to 51% of absolutely nothing. Antonio watches her with growing amazement. Bassanio's mouth hangs slightly open. Furthermore, Portia continues, warming to her argument, there's the question of corporate governance. Benedetto Maritime is registered in Delaware, which has specific laws about transfer of controlling interest. Such transfers trigger mandatory disclosure requirements, board approvals, and potential challenges from minority shareholders. If there are any irregularities in the transfer process, any deviation from exact legal requirements, the transfer can be voided. Judge Hendricks leans forward, now completely engaged. Are you arguing the contract is unenforceable, Miss Belmont? No, Your Honor. I'm arguing that Mr. Levin is entitled to exactly what the contract specifies, but that obtaining it may be far more complicated and expensive than he realizes. He'll need to hire corporate attorneys, valuators, accountants. He'll need to navigate SEC regulations. He'll need to potentially defend against shareholder lawsuits. The legal fees alone could exceed the value of what he's acquiring. She turns back to Shylock. And here's the most important point. The contract specifies that you receive ownership, not operational control. With 51%, yes, you have voting control. But Mr. Benedetto retains 49%. You'll be partners in a failing company, bound together in its potential bankruptcy. Every decision you make, he'll be there questioning, challenging, complicating. You wanted to escape being looked down upon by the establishment? Imagine spending the next 5 years in depositions and board meetings with Antonio Benedetto as your business partner, fighting over every decision in a dying company. The room is utterly silent. Shylock's face has gone pale as the implications sink in. So here's what I propose, Portia says, her voice softening slightly. Mr. Levin, you are entitled to enforce this contract. The law is on your side. But ask yourself what you actually want. Do you want a Pyrrhic victory, a worthless corporate shell that costs you hundreds of thousands in legal fees to acquire? Do you want to be bound to Antonio in a failing business venture? Or do you want something that actually benefits you? She nods to Nerissa, who produces a document from the briefcase. I am prepared to offer you, personally, $75,000 in cash today. Not from Antonio, he has nothing. From me, you'll get your principal returned in full, which is more than you'd likely recover from a bankrupt company. Additionally, I'll add $25,000, a 33% return on your investment over 3 months. Far better than any market rate. She places the cashier's check on the table. $100,000, Mr. Levin. You walk away whole, with profit, and without the nightmare of acquiring a worthless asset that will consume your time and resources for years. All you have to do is tear up that contract. Shylock stares at the check as though it might vanish if he looks away. His attorney whispers urgently in his ear, but Shylock waves him silent. He stands slowly and walks to the window, looking out at the falling snow that blankets Manhattan in temporary purity. You're very clever, Miss Belmont, he says quietly. You found the trap in my own contract, that winning might mean losing, that revenge costs more than it's worth. He turns back to face the room. My daughter is gone because I held on to anger too tightly. I thought proving a point mattered more than forgiveness. I thought the law could give me justice when what I really needed was mercy. He picks up the contract and holds it for a long moment, then slowly tears it in half. I accept your offer, Miss Belmont. $100,000 for the principal and interest. Consider Antonio's debt paid. The snow continues falling as the parties emerge from the law offices onto the cold December streets. Antonio stands on the sidewalk, taking deep breaths of frigid air, a man reprieved from execution, still processing the miraculous reversal of his fate. Manhattan has transformed into a scene from a Christmas card, the harsh edges of the financial district softened by white blankets that muffle car horns and footsteps. Bassanio embraces Portia in full view of passing strangers, no longer caring about appearances or propriety. "You saved him," he whispers into her hair. "You saved us both." "I saved all of us," Portia replies, glancing back at the building where Shylock still lingers with his attorney. "Including him, though he may not realize it yet." Nerissa stands slightly apart, efficient as always, already on a payphone arranging for their car service. Antonio approaches Portia with an expression of profound gratitude mixed with embarrassment. "Miss Belmont, I don't know how to thank you. You spent $100,000 of your personal fortune to rescue a man you've never met from a disaster of his own making." Portia takes his hand warmly. "Mr. Benedetto, Bassanio loves you like a brother. That makes you family to me. Besides, the money isn't a loss, it's an investment in the kind of world I want to live in. One where problems are solved with wisdom rather than destruction, where mercy tempers justice." "Still," Antonio insists, "I will find a way to repay you. When my insurance claims settle, when I rebuild my business." "If you insist on repayment," Portia interrupts gently, "then repay me by being happy, by supporting Bassanio as he continues growing into the man he's capable of becoming, by perhaps reconsidering some of your assumptions about people like Shylock Levin." Her words carry no judgment, but Antonio feels them land nonetheless. He nods slowly, accepting the gentle rebuke. Inside the law office lobby, Shylock signs the final paperwork that officially releases Antonio from the debt. His attorney, Harold Steinberg, hovers nervously, still uncertain whether his client made the right decision. "You could have fought her arguments," Steinberg says. "The corporate complexity she described is real, but manageable. You had the legal right to that company." "Legal rights aren't the same as moral rights," Shylock replies, placing his signature on the last document. "And sometimes winning in court means losing in life. I've learned that lesson too late for my daughter, but maybe not too late for my soul." He accepts the cashier's check from Portia's attorney and tucks it into his breast pocket. $100,000. More money than he lent, a profitable transaction by any measure. But it feels hollow compared to what he's lost: his daughter's presence, his wife's memory untainted by his bitterness, his own sense of himself as something more than the stereotype he's been fighting against his entire life. As he exits the building, he nearly collides with Bassanio, who has been waiting in the lobby. The younger man extends his hand awkwardly. "Mr. Levin, I wanted to say I'm sorry for my part in this, for borrowing money that wasn't mine to risk, for not understanding the position I put Antonio in." Shylock studies Bassanio's face, seeing genuine remorse there. "You love your friend. There's no shame in that. And you found a woman smart enough to save you both from your own recklessness. Treasure her, Mr. Graziano. Intelligence and compassion in one person is rarer than any fortune." Outside, the group reconvenes on the snowy sidewalk. Portia suggests they all go for dinner, a celebration of resolution rather than victory. But Shylock declines with a weary shake of his head. "Thank you, but no. I have somewhere I need to be. Something I should have done weeks ago." He hails a taxi and gives the driver an address in Soho, an industrial neighborhood being transformed by artists and young professionals into something hip and expensive. 20 minutes later, he stands outside, a converted loft building, its ground floor occupied by an avant-garde gallery, displaying sculptures made from car parts and neon lights. According to the information he reluctantly extracted from Lorenzo's employer, his daughter lives on the third floor. He climbs the stairs slowly, each step feeling like a journey across an impossible distance. At the door marked 3C, he raises his hand to knock, then hesitates. What will he say? How does a father bridge the chasm created by control and fear and disappointed expectations? Before he can decide, the door opens. Jessica stands there in jeans and an oversized sweater. Her hair longer than he remembers, her face thinner. For a moment they simply stare at each other, two people separated by only a few feet, but feeling like continents apart. "Father," she says, and her voice breaks on the word. "Jessica," Shylock whispers, and suddenly all the speeches he rehearsed in the taxi evaporate. He is simply a father looking at his daughter, seeing in her face the ghost of his beloved Rebecca and the reality of his own failures. "You found me," Jessica says unnecessarily, stepping back to allow him entry. The loft is small, but filled with light from industrial windows. Canvases lean against exposed brick walls Jessica's paintings. He realizes with a start, not knowing she had taken up art. The furniture is mismatched and second-hand, charming in a bohemian way that his apartment could never be. Lorenzo sits on a worn couch, tension visible in every line of his body, clearly prepared for confrontation. Shylock barely glances at the young man. His attention remains fixed on his daughter. "I should have come sooner. I was angry, hurt, stubborn. I told myself you were the one who left, so you should be the one to reach out. But you're my daughter, Jessica, my only child. And I've been sitting in that apartment alone, letting my pride eat me alive. I didn't leave because I don't love you," Jessica says, tears forming in her eyes. "I left because I was suffocating. You wanted to protect me from a world that hurt you, but in doing so, you trapped me. I couldn't breathe, Father. I couldn't become who I'm supposed to be." "I know," Shylock says, and the admission costs him everything. "Your mother, before she died, she told me I would do this. She said I would hold on too tight out of fear and push you away. I promised her I wouldn't, but I broke that promise. I'm sorry, Jessica. I'm so deeply sorry." Lorenzo stands awkwardly. "Mr. Levin, I love your daughter. I'm not trying to take her from you. I want her to have both of us in her life, her father and someone who loves her for exactly who she is." Shylock finally looks at the young man properly, seeing not a threat but a person. "Do you have a job that pays enough to support her? Health insurance? A plan for the future beyond living in a walk-up in Soho?" "Father," Jessica starts, but Lorenzo raises a hand. "No, it's a fair question. I'm a junior trader at Merrill Lynch. I make $42,000 a year plus bonuses. It's not a fortune, but it's a start. I'm studying for my Series 7 advanced certification. I have ambitions, Mr. Levin, and yes, I have health insurance through my employer." Despite everything, Shylock almost smiles. 42,000. I made less than that my first 5 years in business. At least you're not completely impractical. He reaches into his coat pocket and withdraws a checkbook. "I have something for you, Jessica. Not a bribe, not a manipulation. A gift." He writes quickly and tears off the check, handing it to her. $50,000 for you and Lorenzo. A down payment on an apartment if you want one. Seed money for whatever dreams you're pursuing. Or tuition if you decide to go back to school. Jessica stares at the check, stunned. "Father, This is I can't accept this. You're using money to... I'm using money to do what money should do, Shylock interrupts gently. To make life easier for people I love. To give you choices and security. Not to control you. You'll notice the check is made out to you alone, not contingent on anything, with no strings attached. It's yours, Jessica. To use or not use as you see fit. She throws her arms around him, sobbing into his coat. He holds her the way he hasn't since she was a little girl, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other wrapped around her shoulders. Over her head, he meets Lorenzo's eyes and gives a small nod, not quite approval, but acknowledgement, acceptance. Will you come to dinner sometimes? Jessica asks when she finally pulls back. Both of you and Lorenzo. We could try to be a family, a different kind of family than before. I would like that, Shylock says. And you'll come to the apartment? It's too full of memories for just me. It needs your voice, your laughter. They talk for another hour, tentative and careful, rebuilding bridges that seemed permanently burned. When Shylock finally leaves, stepping back into the December evening where snow has turned to sleet, he feels lighter than he has in months. The money in his breast pocket, Portia's check, suddenly seems less like compensation and more like possibility. He has lost his revenge against Antonio, but gained back something infinitely more valuable. Across town, in Portia's penthouse suite at the Plaza Hotel, where she has been staying during her time in the city, a different reunion unfolds. Antonio, Bassanio, Portia, and Nerissa gather for a private celebration dinner. Room service has delivered champagne and oysters, filet mignon and chocolate soufflé, but the mood is more reflective than festive. To second chances, Antonio raises his champagne glass, and the others echo the toast. Bassanio sits close to Portia on the cream-colored sofa, their hands intertwined in a way that suggests they've stopped performing for the world and started simply being together. Nerissa occupies an armchair by the window, watching the city lights sparkle through the sleet with a contented smile. I need to say something, Antonio announces, setting down his glass. What happened today, Portia? Your brilliance saved me from ruin. Yes, but it also showed me something I've been avoiding for years. I've been so proud of my generosity, my interest-free loans, my reputation as a good man. But that goodness was easy because I never faced real consequences. I risked other people's money through my shipping ventures, but kept myself insulated from failure. And I looked down on Shylock for charging interest, for protecting himself, without understanding what it's like to build something from nothing in a world that doesn't want you to succeed. He walks to the window, looking out at the city he thought he understood. Shylock was right. My generosity was a luxury afforded by privilege. I never had to be careful or calculating because I always had a safety net. He had to fight for every dollar, protect every asset, because one mistake could destroy everything he built. I judged him for that caution and called it greed. Portia joins him at the window. The difference between you two isn't virtue, Antonio. It's circumstance. You both survived in the world you were given, playing by the rules that applied to you. The tragedy is that this city creates two sets of rules and then judges people for following the ones they're forced to play by. What will you do now? Nerissa asks Antonio. Your company is intact but damaged. The insurance claims will take time to resolve. Antonio considers the question carefully. I'm going to rebuild, but differently, smaller, more sustainable. Less leverage, less risk, less gambling on cargo ships crossing oceans. Maybe I'll even charge interest on loans, make my generosity more honest and less condescending. Bassanio stands and crosses to his friend, and I'm going to help. Not with borrowed money or charm, but with actual work. I'm done living beyond my means and pretending to be someone I'm not. Portia deserves better than that version of me. I don't deserve anything, Portia says firmly. But I choose you, Bassanio. The real you, flaws and debts and Queen's upbringing included. We'll figure out the rest together. She turns to Antonio. I have a proposal. Benedetto Maritime needs capital to rebuild. I need something meaningful to do besides managing my inheritance. Let me invest in your company, not as charity, but as a legitimate business partnership. You provide the expertise and experience. I provide the capital and some strategic oversight. We split the profits according to a formula that's fair to both of us. Antonio's eyebrows raise. You want to go into the shipping business? I want to build something that matters, Portia replies. My father left me money, but he also left me his business instincts and his love of smart risks. Let's put that to use. Plus, I suspect Bassanio will be joining your firm eventually, which means I have a vested interest in its success. Nerissa laughs. She's been reading maritime insurance journals for 2 weeks. She's absolutely serious about this. They talk deep into the night, planning a future built on honesty rather than pretense, partnership rather than hierarchy. By the time they finally part ways, the sleet has stopped and the city sparkles with that peculiar clarity that comes after winter storms, everything washed clean, at least temporarily. 3 months later, in early March of 1988, several small but significant events occur almost simultaneously in the transformed landscape of these interconnected lives. Antonio's insurance claim settles favorably, providing enough capital combined with Portia's investment to purchase 2 smaller cargo vessels and re-establish Benedetto Maritime Holdings on a more modest but sustainable scale. The company moves to smaller offices in Brooklyn, closer to the docks, further from the prestige of Wall Street. Bassanio and Portia marry in a small ceremony at the Belmont estate, with only close friends attending. Nerissa serves as maid of honor. Antonio walks Portia down the aisle in the absence of her father, a gesture that moves everyone present. They honeymoon not in Europe or the Caribbean, but driving cross-country in a rented car, discovering America together without luxury or pretense. Jessica Levin enrolls at Parsons School of Design to study painting, her tuition paid partially by her father's gift, and partially by money she earns working at the gallery below her apartment. Lorenzo proposes to her on the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, with a modest ring he saved for months to afford. She says yes. Shylock, when informed, surprises them both by offering to pay for the wedding. His only condition is that it includes both Jewish and Catholic traditions, a merging of worlds rather than a rejection of either. And on a Tuesday afternoon, when spring finally begins warming the city, Shylock receives an unexpected visitor at his office. Antonio Benedetto, carrying a bottle of expensive scotch and a proposal. I'm rebuilding my company, Antonio says without preamble, and I need reliable lending partners for short-term capital to bridge the gaps between cargo deliveries and payment collections. Standard commercial terms, proper interest rates, everything legitimate and respectful. I wondered if you might be interested in discussing a formal business relationship. Shylock studies him for a long moment. then retrieves 2 glasses from his desk drawer. I might be interested in that discussion. Shall we begin? They pour the scotch and begin negotiating terms. 2 men who nearly destroyed each other, now carefully building something better on the ruins of their conflict. Outside, Manhattan continues its relentless churn of ambition and commerce, but in this small office, something quieter and more valuable takes root: mutual respect, hard-earned and honestly given. The city doesn't change because of their personal transformations. Wall Street continues its ruthless pursuit of profit. Prejudice and privilege remain woven into the fabric of every institution. But in the small spaces between the grand narratives, in individual choices to see each other as human rather than stereotype, something shifts. Not redemption exactly, but recognition. Not justice, but mercy. Not perfection, but the possibility of something better than what came before. And in 1987, in the autumn of excess before the fall, that possibility is enough.